Can you imagine what it would be like to lose one of your children in a tragic car accident and months later, broken with grief, you hear from them again in the afterlife? How would you feel? It seems unbelievable, but believe me if I tell you that it has happened and that it is a completely real story. The protagonist of our story was named Macy Mathis, and unfortunately she's no longer in this world. Macy was a normal 16-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her. Unlike most young people her age, Macy wasn't ashamed to be with her family. On the contrary, Macy loved nothing more than spending time with them and talking about how lucky she felt to be part of their beautiful family. Among her many passions, Macy loved to read, and although very few people knew it, she also loved to write. In fact, not only did she love it, she was excellent at it, and during the months leading up to her death, the young woman had been writing the manuscript for what she intended to be her debut novel. A romantic novel for teenagers that she had planned to enter a youth literature contest held every year in New York. Unfortunately, she never finished it, and her dream of becoming a writer vanished along with her on the night of her death. Her parents were Cindy and Edison Mathis, a middle-aged married couple whose sole purpose in life was to care for their children, Macy and Steve, and to ensure the best futures for them. Steve was 3 years older than his sister, but the age difference never posed a problem between them. They always understood each other perfectly and were inseparable from an early age. That is why when Macy passed away unexpectedly, her brother decided to accept a scholarship to continue his studies in Europe and move away from the place where everything reminded him of her. The pain of her absence was too great, and Steve saw distance as the best solution. His parents, on the other hand, believed that the most appropriate thing to do was just the opposite. Mr. and Mrs. Mathis were partners in a major New York law firm and both specialized in handling family law cases. Their marriage came naturally after 4 years of intense courtship in law school, so no one was surprised when they announced their engagement just a year after graduating. They were married in church in an intimate ceremony with no more than 50 guests and bought a beautiful house in one of Manhattan's most respected neighborhoods. However, despite being a wealthy family that enjoyed multiple privileges, they never showed signs of feeling superior to the rest. On the contrary, the Mathis enjoyed participating in any collective activity in which they could make new friends or help those who needed it most. And it was precisely their empathy and spirit of solidarity that led them to become one of the most beloved couples in the neighborhood. Everyone who knew the family said the same thing about them. They're the perfect family. They're kind and their children are very well educated. They always have a kind word for their neighbors and friends. It seems to me that there's no family that better reflects the spirit of the American family than the Mathis, declared one of their neighbors who lived on the same street as them in a local newspaper that was writing a story about them a year after the tragic death of their daughter. And they really were a perfect traditional American family that fate was not so kind to and ended up taking away all their happiness in an instant. The instant their youngest daughter was killed when her car crashed into a freight truck when she was returning from a party with friends across town. Without further ado, the young and joyful Macy left this world, plunging her family into the greatest of sadness. The loss of a child, and especially the way Mathis lost theirs, is a nightmare no parent should ever have to live through. The pain of having your daughter taken from you and replaced with a huge void in your heart is simply indescribable. The young girl's parents didn't know how to handle the loss of their daughter. They were saddened and both stopped working for months. They couldn't go on with their lives and pretend nothing had happened. Both went into a deep depression, but the one who was coping the worst was her mother Cindy, who didn't even dare to get out of bed. She only wanted to sleep, and when she woke up, she spent long hours crying, clutching the photograph of her little girl. Steve, as we said, was the first to distance himself from the house and all the sadness that lived there. When he left to study in Europe, his parents became even more lonely and began to feel that their family, the one that had always stood together in the face of any adversity, was slowly falling apart because of the deep pain they felt over Macy's absence. "Cindy, we have to go on living. I'm sure that you wouldn't want to see us like this. There was nothing that would make our little girl happier than to see us together, and now we're getting further and further apart and have stopped communicating. Honey, please let yourself be helped. It breaks my heart to see you like this," her husband told her a few months after the accident and after weeks of unsuccessful attempts to get his wife out of bed and into therapy. But his wife refused to listen to anyone. The only thing she asked every night in tears was for her daughter to come back. But the reality was that it was impossible to bring Macy back. She died on the spot in that car accident. That was the only truth, and they had to accept it as soon as possible in order to move forward. It was unfair and inexplicable, and her mother missed her more than anyone else in the world. It seemed impossible for anyone to get her out of that state of infinite sadness, no one except her daughter. Cindy needed to close that chapter of her life, to be able to say goodbye to her little girl and make sense of everything that happened. The days and months after Macy's death were the worst of her life. She stopped being the kind and hardworking woman she had always been. She didn't go out, she didn't talk to anyone, all she did was thinking about her daughter. It was logical to believe that the only one capable of bringing her out of that state and restoring her hope was Macy. And she did, when her mother, while rummaging through her daughter's things once again, found a collection of handwritten letters from her just a few weeks before the one-year anniversary of her death. When she found them at the bottom of a desk drawer, Cindy's blood instantly ran cold. She noticed her heart pounding and her hands shaking uncontrollably. However, she didn't stop and continued on. She knew that the letters were not there by chance and that her daughter from beyond the grave was sending her a message. And the truth is that she was, although not in the way that she thought. It turned out that before her daughter left this world, Macy gave her mother a priceless gift. 25 letters sealed in envelopes with themes for every occasion. There were letters for sleepless nights, letters for frustrated days, letters for when her mother had little everyday problems, letters for marriage arguments, even letters for when her mother would have to deal with retirement, and they were all ready to be opened just when they were needed most. And in that pile, right in the middle, was a letter that froze Cindy in her tracks and changed the course of things forever. The letter was titled, "Open It When You Miss Me." Cindy didn't know how she would react when she opened it. What could her daughter say to her from beyond the grave? Was Cindy really ready to read those words and come full circle? Would she find in that letter the answer to all her questions, or would it make her feel even worse? She had many doubts, but none outweighed the need to feel again that her daughter was near. Reading it would be the closest thing to talking to Macy again, and she had to open those letters to feel her daughter by her side again. With trembling hands and her heart pounding in her chest, Cindy carefully opened the letter and read what her daughter had written to her. "Hi, Mom. I'm sorry you miss me. I hope wherever you are or whatever you're doing, you're okay. I sure miss you too. Honestly, I don't like to be away from home too much. I get homesick pretty easily. When I was little and living with Dad, I look forward to being with you. I think it was partly because you always had good food at home, but mostly because I missed you so much. I will always and forever love you, Mom. Thank you for all you've done for me. Macy Mathis." That letter was just what Cindy needed. She had gone through the hardest months of her life, losing a daughter she loved more than anything. But in the midst of all the sadness and grief, this letter had allowed her to finally say goodbye to her and come full circle. Through it, she not only confirmed what a wonderful person her daughter was, but also showed how special she was and how strong the bond between her mother and daughter was. No one would ever separate her from her. She was now aware of that. Cindy wiped away her tears, and after rereading the letters many more times, she knew exactly what she had to do. The sadness had to end, and just as her daughter would have done, she had to move on with her life. Rereading her daughter's letters, she understood that living did not mean forgetting her. On the contrary, she would honor her daughter's memory every day, and everything good she did from then on would be in her honor. Thus, she began to give meaning to her life again, and Cindy said goodbye to months of unbearable pain. Sometime later, and with the support of her husband and son, Cindy decided to post Macy's letter on the Facebook page she created in honor of her daughter, where she also explained her feelings about the message from the other side of the grave. "This letter was so hard to open. You don't know how much Mom misses you. There isn't a second of the day that goes by that I don't think of you. You are my rock, my best friend, my everything," Macy's mom wrote. "We love you so much, little girl. Mommy misses you more than words can express. Good night, my sweet, beautiful angel." The Facebook group quickly responded to the post with hundreds of positive messages supporting Cindy for her bravery and sending kisses to heaven in memory of the sweet and charismatic Macy. Through the internet, Cindy found the comfort she so desperately needed, meeting other mothers and fathers who, like her, had suffered the loss of one of their children in a traumatic way. The pain never completely went away, as it is impossible for the loss of a child to stop hurting, but it never again paralyzed Cindy and made her forget who she was and what her purpose in life was. Macy was physically gone, but her mother never stopped feeling her for an instant. This story doesn't have a happy ending, as it is still the story of a tragedy, but it has a beautiful moral from which we can all learn something. The people who love us, if they really love us, never abandon us. We just have to be brave enough to learn to meet them through the signs they leave us and move on with our lives. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.